Hey everyone, Sumo Spiffy here. The Aki Banzuke just came out, and if you're wondering why it looks like such a catastrophic mess, well, that's because it is, and this video is here to explain it. There is a premise that appears to be at work for most of it, a certain thread of thought that I don't think too many people really predicted was going to happen, but it doesn't really stick the whole way through. It mostly sticks the whole way through. And then there are points where it kind of falls apart. So let's talk about it real quick. The basic premise, where it slips and where it collapses completely. So here we've got the initial slide from the Guess the Banzuke video, right? The initial setup. We've got asterisk people. These are the COVID guys. You've got the last number is the number of COVID absences they have, including their walkover loss. Now, what they ended up doing, or appeared to do, was everybody who did not get 8 wins or 8 losses just was kosho. They just didn't get moved. That doesn't really vibe with what Izagahama said about them being fair, because not moving Katonawaka when he was 7-3 seems not super fair. But okay, that's what they did. Furthermore, what they seemed to do was take everybody who had actually gotten to 8 wins or 8 losses. If you had 8 wins, they filled out your record with losses. And if you had 8 losses, they filled it out with wins. Basically, it looked like they tried to minimize movement as much as possible for anybody that had to drop out due to COVID. So when you change everybody's records, what you end up with is something that looks a little bit like this. So as you can see, you've got Katonawaka at 0015, Tamawashi 0015. Endo goes from 3-9 to 6-9. Tobizaru, Nishikigi go from 8-4 to 8-7. This changes how everybody lines up when you do your initial calculations. You might be looking at this and saying, well, now wait a second. Tobizaru at 8-7 and Maegashira 6 West, but he ended up at 1 East. How is that possible? It's possible because of this. If you look at this, the only person who's got a blue name that's ahead of him is Katonawaka, but Katonawaka didn't have 8 wins, so they're not moving him. There's nobody to stop him from going to 1 East. There's no one here. And then Midori Fuji he remains the next one to go to 1 West. Katonawaka stays at 2 East. You have to pick between these two to go up to 2 West. They picked Meisei. Okay, valid enough. Tamawashi doesn't move. Ura is still 1, 2, 3 ranks ahead of these guys, so they just let him go without a demotion. And then Nishikigi moves up to 4 East. Takayasu doesn't move. Then at 5 East, you need somebody with a winning record to move up there. That's Takara Fuji. And everything is just like it was in the Guess the Banzuke video at this point. Sadanoumi goes to 5 West, Wakamoto Haru to 6 East, because they bump up and everybody around them has already gone up, everybody who has a winning record. And then we hit the chaos point. How the hell did Endo only go down 1.5 ranks when he dropped out with a 3-9 record? Well, if we go back, that's actually the correct place for him to go, because he's the next one on the list. As crazy as it is, if you let him run with a 6-9 record, he's next. He's the next guy. He's the one that has to go in at 6 West. He gets the next slot. It seems crazy, but it's, that's how that works out. After that, you end up with Aoyama ahead of Onisho, which according to the ranks, that's correct. It still seems a little weird because Aoyama only goes down 1 rank on a full 6-9. He's not getting any kind of benefit from the math that they're using for the guys who dropped out due to COVID, but that's how that works. So Onisho goes to 7 West, but then that's where things get a little squirrely. Hokuto Fuji, Tochinoshin. Well, Hokuto Fuji, by this idea, they're both 7-8, so he should stay ahead of Tochinoshin, right? They should both not move. And that is not at all what happened. Hokuto Fuji dropped a rank, and Tochinoshin didn't go anywhere. Why? I don't know. It's almost like they recognize that Tochinoshin actually went 7-8 and Hokuto Fuji didn't. All right, fine. For this one, they do a little bit of a bump for the acknowledgement. Yeah, they didn't have quite the same record. Fine, whatever. We'll let that one go. Miyogiryu Kotoeko Nushiki Fuji. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. Because if you look at how that plays out, well, now you need guys with winning records. Miyogiryu, Koto Echo, he's not moving. And then Nishiki Fuji's the next one. Everybody else has a losing record, so they can't go up that far unless you really want to under-demote them. Okay, cool. We're good there. But now we've got Takano Sho. Now, Takano Sho and Ryuden, they just kind of had to get placed. Like, they had to go somewhere. Where do you put them? Committee was just free to do whatever. Not a big deal. They could have gone almost anywhere from basically 9 to 14, and it wouldn't have been that strange. But we've got Chiyotairyu and Okinoumi. Now, initially, on the Guess the Banzuke thing, Chiyotairyu and Okinoumi rated out to the same point. But if you give Okinoumi credit for winning the last fight, what you end up with is him, let's clear that, is him one rank ahead of Chiyotairyu. So he should be ahead of Chiyotairyu in this one. And yet he wasn't. He ended up 1/2 rank behind. Chiyotairyu had a full 6-9 record. Okinoumi 5-10 from rank 7 is a 5 rank drop. That's exactly what he got. He got his 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But why did he get the full 5 and Chiyotairyu only went down 1.5? That's a mystery. I have no idea. I mean, you can look at it as, well, that's the best he could have done, but lots of other people are getting the benefit of, oh, well, I guess we're just going to move him up because we're moving a lot of people up. Endo should have gotten 3 on 6 and 9. He only got 1.5 because that's how the lineup ended up working. Why did Okinoumi, who, again, rated, let's check the other one again. By this premise, he is ahead. Why did he end up behind Chiyotairyu? I don't know. Ichi Yamamoto, this poor bastard, he just doesn't get to go anywhere. Now, on 14 West, you've got all of these guys, right? That is crazy. Now, Takano Sho's obviously been bumped up, but Tsurugisho, he was 5-7, right? Let's go back to the original slide. 5-7. He should have been considered Kosho. Like I mentioned in the Guess the Banzuke video, Oho, Yutakiyama, Chiyoshima, and Terutsuyoshi came together very, very cleanly. Like, they packed into a very small space in the ranks. So if the committee wanted to keep them together and that forced Tsurugisho to go down 1 rank, okay, that's a decision made that looks the same as mine, but for a different reason. That's not a huge deal. However, let's remember about Daiamami. Let's remember that Daiamami should have been 7-8. At minimum, he should have been 6-9 because his official record was 2-9-4. If you make him eat the COVID walkover loss, he's 6-9 if you also give him credit for winning the rest of his fights like you seem to be doing with everyone else here. That means if you give him 7-8, he should really, if they're getting rid of Maegashira 17, he probably still drops to like Juryo 1. But even if you do 6-9, with the ranks that were in play in Nagoya, he only drops down to 2 West, and the guy who ended up taking the spot from him, or not from him, but who ended up taking the last spot in the Banzuke, Hirotoumi, he only rated up to Juryo 3E. So Daiamami arguably should have been able to stay in Makuuchi in either case. Not only didn't he get to stay, he ended up at Juryo 8. He ended up at Juryo 8 East. At 2-9, by the math, that's a 7 rank drop. They really don't like to over-demote guys. Now, I grant Hidenomi got an extra 1/2 rank of demotion this time, but they hate that guy. Juryo 8 East is definitely an over-demotion for a guy who was out due to COVID. That is nuts. I don't know why they did that to him. I have no clue. I have no explanation. It is the only thing that really destroys the premise. Although if you look at Juryo, like Azumaryu didn't get to 8 wins or losses. He dropped a 1/2 rank. There were a couple other guys that didn't have 8 wins or losses, and they went down a 1/2 rank or a rank. So the Juryo guys were not treated the same as the guys in Makuuchi for purposes of how you deal with the COVID Kyujos. The guys who only had like 5 wins and 3 losses, they stayed in place. Like, that one was easy. But the guys who were close, 6, 7 losses, they got moved. and the Makuuchi guys didn't. I don't know why the change there, and I definitely don't know why this was done to Daiamami. But by and large, that premise stuck for the most part, which is the vaguest way of explaining it, but it does lend at least a basic thread of logic to the changes that were made. Finally, let me just touch on the Daisho thing real quick. It's kind of hard to explain why they did this. I only have an educated guess, and even though it makes sense in my head, it's a little difficult to put into words. Basically, what it looks like they did was they saw that he was 6 and 6, and even though they would have been fine just leaving him as Sekiwake 1 West, they decided that he had to be shown as less of a Sekiwake than Hoshoryu. That's probably not the best way of putting it. But basically, Hoshoryu went to 1 West, which is to say he did not get the extra rank. That's important. They didn't say, okay, well, you've been doing well at Komusubi, you got 9 wins, we'll make a new rank for you. If they were doing that, Daisho would still be at Sekiwake 1, and Hoshoryu would have gotten Sekiwake 2. They moved Hoshoryu up to a main slot because they basically said, you deserve this, but Daisho, you didn't do enough to get demoted because you had to drop out. That's a very strange situation. That is a very, very weird setup. It kind of makes sense in retrospect, but I would have never expected this, not in 1,000 years. I mean, in time, that's just going to be a historical footnote, but at the moment, you know, we're all just going to look at that and say, huh, they did that. And that's the Banzuke. That's the joy and the frustration of predicting this thing, is because sometimes they just do shit like this and you'll never predict it all right. Okay, that'll do it. Hope you've enjoyed. We'll see you for the Aki Basho. Have a great day.